Where to start, when started, where to stop, and how to disentangle one from the other, except quite artificially and tactically, temporarily. Identity, for example, Laura's identity. Laura's identity. It may be something of a product of institutional forces, one conditioned or even corralled, constrained by patriarchy, her father Philip, her loathsome uncle Frederick, her abysmal suitor Percival, all conspire to direct her into this disastrous marriage. Anatomy is destiny. Anatomy, indeed, is fatality, a word this book likes very much. Thus we approach the question of identity, only to find ourselves in the vicinity of other questions, the questions of time and fate on the one hand, and of the institutional on the other. Perhaps Laura's fate at the hands of the patriarchy is to be institutionalized. Think of the social institution of marriage, which requires that she move into her husband's house, a manor house, a seat of the minor aristocracy. Note the imagery provided by Marion, that wilderness of trees which Marion can see from her bedroom window at Blackwater Park. They're trees which, quote, shut out the view on all sides and look dimly black and solid in the distance like a great wall of rock. A prison wall? Which reminds us of the sound of the front door being locked up for the night. Quote, the iron thumping of bolts and bars that Marion hears. Most institutions in this book do indeed put us in mind of houses of reformation, correction, or what Marion calls moral transformation, though not for the better, or worse, houses of obliteration, ones designed to erase all but the faintest traces of one's identity. And what fourth question pops out from behind those seemingly impenetrable trees, even before we've taken up the third, the question of time, change, and fate? What emerges but the question of social class, which also corrals and conditions Laura's identity to the extent that it does her marriage choice. From proper considerations of class, even the independent independent-minded Marion, who is an individual, is not free. Institutional pressures, then, working on behalf of class, gender, with such powerful forces pressing in upon one, how much room is left for one's own identity, even that truncated entity that Marion on page 216 calls one's, quote, secret self. As if the de-individuating institutional forces of gender and class were not enough, they appear to have suborned the not institutional but metaphysical powers of time, change, and fate. We recall that Laura, as her marriage date of December 22nd approaches, is beset by fear or even horror or loathing of a certain change, the married state, and with it, sex with Sir Percival, a change that seems as inescapable as fate. Hartwright speaks of a, quote, chain of events on page 78, a chain hard to break. This would appear to be a change as inevitable as a passage of time, as inevitable as change itself, a notion of which we have seen before. You will recall the line, naught may endure but mutability. That's the last line of a poem called Mutability by Percy Bysshe Shelley, but quoted by Mary Shelley in Frankenstein. Hartwright speaks of time with a big T, quote, holding something obscurely impending, something invisibly threatening, over our heads. Hey, not that we don't have refusals, rebellions, but the institution seems to govern time itself. The individual, he or she can but go to ground. A complication we may explore in class. Laura is an individual. Hartwright is an individual. Marion is an individual. We will find them beleaguered, beset, even bested. But is not the bester, he who bests them, Fosco, above all? Is not this bester Fosco too, an individual? How does that factor into our understanding of this issue, of the individual versus the institutional?